watching on Facebook. My name's Stevie Stevens Burden, and I am proud to be a member of a long-standing family who has served, and we're here to celebrate today. But we kind of got some new ways of doing things. Generally, this is a time when we come together as family and hug and hang out and eat together, and we can't do that today. But I thought it was important, you know, I woke up this morning and kind of groaned because it was pouring down rain, and I was, you know, wishing I could just kind of bail and this wouldn't happen. But then I started thinking that I can't do that because, sorry folks, just stay back. I couldn't do that because wars don't take rain days, and they don't take snow days, and they don't take blistering hot days off. They march ahead day in and day out. And I was reminded of a story that my uncle used to tell me. My uncle, when was in World War II, and he was in the Army Infantry. And it's not a very glamorous position to be in. He was a private, and he went through his training, and they shipped him out to New Guinea, which is right off the coast of Australia. And anybody that knows anything about the Pacific arena knows it was one of the hardest, ugliest fought battles in the Pacific. Guys were in foxholes for months. And when my uncle came back, and I was a kid, he was never really able to be independent, so he always lived with us in our basement. And he would come upstairs and he would sit in the living room, and he would fall asleep sitting up with his head in his hand. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. And I asked him, I said, "Unc, why are you always falling asleep sitting up?" And he told me that because in New Guinea, they have torrential downpours and rain just like they do here. And if the guys fell asleep or tried to lay down, they were often at risk of drowning because the water in the foxholes were so deep. And I decided after remembering that story that, you know, I was willing to come out and brave a little rain to pay honor, not just to those who served and died in the wars, but also those who served and came back and dealt with the scars of the wars they fought in for the rest of their life. You know, my dad came back with rheumatic fever and jungle rot, and every day of his life was a reminder of what he'd done to fight for our country in World War II. So here we are. So for me, not only is this not just about Memorial Day, it's about Veterans Day, because it's the one day a year we all get together and respect and show honor to all of our veterans, whether they died in service or not. And currently, you know, I look around and I see my family in masks, and I'm reminded that many of our warriors today may never have donned a military uniform. Instead, they are first responders, they're the police force, they're the volunteers who sit home every day and sew masks for all of us. There are police, there are public health officials, and they are doing their job right now to make sure that we are safe against an invisible enemy. So for me today, it's not just about Memorial Day and Veterans Day, it's about today and what our folks in uniform, whether they wear scrubs or a fire uniform or a police uniform, or they sit at home in front of a sewing machine, are all equally heroes and deserve to be honored today. So with that said, I wanted to take a minute. We're going to have, as we often do, a blessing. And because one of the things that I love about this ceremony is we are a very intergenerational group. Some of us have 4 and 5 generations of our family in here. So in part of passing the torch to the next generation, her mom and I conscripted Brianna Stevens, who is also a long family history here to do the blessing for this morning.
Thank you, Stevie. I'm going to take my mask off too, because I'm far away. Okay, I had to write it down, because there's no way I'd ever remember all that like you did. Okay. So a short bit about me. I am Brianna. I am daughter to Dave and Gail, granddaughter to Phyllis. Most of you here know that already anyway, but I mention my lineage because I can trace it back for generations in this area. Many of my relatives are buried right here in this cemetery, all over the place. All of us have been brought up to respect this place for the obvious reasons, but also for the military history that surrounds us. Each one of these headstones tells a name and a date, but the flags we see go up every year are a physical reminder that there is a story and there is a sacrifice to be honored and never forgotten. So thank you to our veterans who are here and those who are gone before us. Now, I went down kind of an internet rabbit hole searching for how to do this invocation. And in the VFW handbook, it says one of the qualifications for a chaplain is, can you project your voice and read aloud in public? So I figure I can at least have that part covered. So thank you for asking me to do this. I'm not an obvious choice, but I am honored. In my searches, I came across this prayer, and I know it was intended for our fallen military heroes, and it is, but it is especially current in today's world and our struggles. So it was written by Austin Fleming. Let us pray. In the quiet sanctuaries of our own hearts, let each of us name and call on the one whose power over us is great and gentle, firm and forgiving, holy and healing. You who created us, who sustain us, who call us to live in peace, hear our prayer this day. Hear our prayer for all who have died, whose hearts and hopes are known to you alone. Hear our prayer for those who put the welfare of others ahead of their own, and give us hearts as generous as theirs. Hear our prayer for those who gave their lives in the service of others, and accept the gift of their sacrifice. Help us to shape and make a world where we will lay down the arms of war and turn our swords into plowshares for a harvest of justice and peace. Comfort those who grieve the loss of their loved ones, and let your healing be the hope in our hearts. Hear our prayer this day, and in your mercy answer us in the name of all that is holy. The peace of God be with you. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Dave?
Oh, okay.
If Mr. Dillon would like to...
My name is Dave Dillon. I live in Manzanita. You want? Who else? Go ahead.
Sorry. Can't break the tradition. We got a reading of Flanders Field first. Because if you're a member of our family...
But I do have a loud voice.
Yes. You got that?
Sorry, Dave.
Just warming up, please.
Why don't you introduce yourself before you start?
My name's Emma Grimes. I am the daughter of Sean Grimes and Marcy Grimes.
Nice and loud.
In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce head amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the flood, to you from fallen hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if you would faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Dillon. I've lived in the area about 25 years. I have one relative buried here, my mother-in-law, back around the corner there. And as I walk around here with my dogs, I see a lot of people I knew in the last 25 years. My father served a career in the Navy, including World War II and Korea. My brother did a hitch in the Navy, including in-country Vietnam. I did a career in the Navy, including off Vietnam for a short while. And this is a piece I wrote for Memorial Day. I wrote it in '96. It's called The Wettest Place on Earth. And I've always thought it appropriate for a Memorial Day. The wettest place I have ever been is in France. It's a battlefield where great armies clashed, where many men fought and died. It's a bluff in Normandy overlooking Omaha Beach, a principal landing site, the 1944 invasion to liberate Europe. It's the wettest place because it is daily watered by the tears of those who remember that day, those who remember friends or loved ones who looked up at that hill from the incoming boats, and those of us not yet born who can never imagine the courage it took to step off into certain death. We will never know what was in the hearts and minds of those men the instant before fire and steel took their lives. Was it love of country or a determination to free an imprisoned people? Was it to avenge the deaths of so many or to avoid being a disappointment to their buddies? Or did they just resolve that the quickest way possible home, to where fear no longer filled every waking hour, was through the killing ground ahead? Atop that bluff in Normandy lie thousands of American dead. They repose in a peace so different from the hell that surrounded them in the moments before their lives ended. The white stone markers seem to go on forever. Each represents a person of worth. Each represents a hero. Just as those heroes of Normandy 3/4 of a century ago deserve our thoughts, so do all the American military men and women who died in service. From the very first casualties in the war that earned us our nation, to the last who perhaps died yesterday in some far-off place. They may have seen their duty in many different ways, but they carried it out. So please take a moment this Memorial Day to remember those who fulfilled their covenant with destiny by stepping into the breach when their country called. Remember those who failed, because they should never be forgotten. And should a tear fall on the grass at your feet, think of it as nurturing the soil of the land those soldiers loved so well. Thank you.
Next, we're gonna hear about a little more about some of the folks that are here. This is Eileen, and she's gonna tell a little story about a project she's been doing.
My name is Eileen Norquist. I belong to the clan of Halversons and the Edgar family here. I think I have 3 generations in this cemetery, but in Tillamook County there's 5 generations. So a lot of, and when I retired from the Seattle area, one of my loves was this cemetery because my grandparents were buried here, as well as aunts and uncles. So being part of the Nehalem Valley Historical Society, I took on the project. I found out that we have Civil War veterans and Spanish-American War veterans buried here. They were not killed in the war. They came out here during those war times and afterwards. So you will find some new medallions designating Civil War and Spanish-American War. They are bronze. We have 5 in this section over here, 2 in that section, and 1 right down here on the corner. So take some time and take a look at them. I am giving some booklets to each mayor for their city, so they will be on display there, and also at the Nehalem Valley Historical Society. We have located the names of these Civil War, Spanish-American War veterans. On the bulletin board over here, we have the locations where they're buried at. So, and one of the things I also discovered, Civil War, their medallions had GAR, Grand Army of the Republic. So that's what GAR stands for. And the war was from 1861 to 65. And Oregon had a special Oregon Voluntary Infantry. It was formed in 1862, and it was referred to as the Oregon Peak Regiment. And you'll hear people talk about the Oregon Peak School, and this regiment was there to provide security for those coming out west through wagon trains. They also did surveying work. So they were the guarded travelers. Let's see. Spanish-American War was from 1898 to 1902. So I just welcome everybody. The medallions will have a little flag on them. There is one Civil War veteran that has two medallions. One very old, very rusted, and you can't see the lettering on it. But we put a new one out also for him. So, welcome.
Thank you. And I think if people go and sorry, not in the right place. Oh, there you are. And review the names in that book, you'll hear some very familiar ones. At this time, because I couldn't figure out, well, at this time, before we move ahead, after hearing from that, we always like to take a minute to recognize our vets who are here in attendance. And if you feel comfortable, if you're a vet, if you'd like to step up into the road and let us give you, come on down. I know you guys, come on. I know. Who else are vets? Any other vets with us today?
Just give them an order. Fall in.
Yeah, fall in. Okay, so we don't have as many here today as we usually do, but I think it's real important for those of us that are here to give some respect and honor to these men and women who fought for our country, especially today. So how about a big round of applause for our vets? Thank you. Thank you for your service. So, you can feel free to run back to your families now. I couldn't figure out exactly how we were going to do today. We usually sing a whole bunch of songs, and I'm deaf, so you never want to ask a deaf girl to sing. So we're going to do one verse of America the Beautiful, and Bob Latour is going to, is going to play us through that. So someone like my cousin over there who sings, if you could start us out, that would be great.
Not with me on tip. Go ahead. Precious sky,
Not bad. We need some work. We can practice. We're going to now just take a moment of silence while Bob again plays taps in honor of the people that we're here to give respect to today. Bob, if you could.
All over here, or I don't want to blast you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you for everybody here and everybody who may be watching live. Just remember when we go out of here today, even though we are still under stay-at-home order, reach out and thank a vet, thank a first responder, thank a grocery worker. These are hard and difficult times, and I just think it's important that we remember that we are a community. Generations of our families are here and built this community. So thank those folks that served before and those ones that are working hard, like the guys hiding in the back row back there, for their service to our community and to our country. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you again next year.